what is the big question which is being asked? Has Bermuda lost its charms? And this is the answer I found. Bermuda's still.
Who are the Talbot brothers? Who are these guys? Listen, let me tell you how important and how big they were. They had an instrument called the dog box. Every celebrity between the 40s and the 50s wanted to sign it. Everybody from Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Doris Day. I'm not saying that the Talbot brothers were asking for their autographs. They were asking the Talbot brothers if they can sign the dog box.
It was a unique brand of Calypso that's only applicable to the Talbot brothers and to Bermuda. It has not been replicated.
The Talbot brothers had a beautiful sound, and very often on the second or third time you heard them, you would even know the songs.
And the Talbot brothers' sound was different than any other Calypsonian group because they were all acoustic instruments that they used. They used acoustic guitar, maracas, baby conga drums, and bongos, percussion instruments, and of course the accordion. So that sound was unique in itself. Capitol Records at the time signed them to their label, and they were the only Calypsonian group internationally was the Talbot brothers.
My grandmother, Mamie Talbot, she was instrumental in demanding that the Talbot brothers appeared in church in his early years and getting them to join into the choir, and that was a mandatory choir duties. She was kind of instrumental in having some shape in the direction and fortune of her sons, which is the Talbot brothers, and the direction they took in entertainment.
When you think of an island destination, you can't help but think of Calypso.
With so many black Bermudians coming from the West Indies to Bermuda, they started to bring the albums. And so Calypso comes into Bermuda because of Harry Belafonte and other Calypsonians who grew out of that movement in the West Indies. And they saw the potential, a small group with guitars. And of course, the Talbot brothers invent their own doghouse box, which became the Bermuda Stradivarius. It's amazing. And then, because of the color and the life in the words and the music itself, they designed their own hats and their bright shirts. And then, because in the Caribbean they were a little bit more risque in their songs.
And not unlike the Gombe movement, what is characteristic about Calypso is that it is a musical art form, but it's also a literary art form because it's full of messages, full of hidden messages. Why did the Gombe wear masks? Because they were introducing stories that perhaps were offensive and they didn't want to be identified. And so it was the same thing with the Calypso. The Calypso, as I perceived it anyway, was full of a number of salacious, sometimes salacious, but always double entendre, these double meanings, so that not everyone would be able to understand exactly what they were saying.
One expected one particular type of sensuous rhyme to a word, and they changed it. They were able to lure into the Talbot net Bermudians and tourists based on their personality, their friendliness, their kindness, their sweetness, their openness. They love people.
Initially, when they started, they were outside in the community, riding around in horse and buggy, going to certain spots, workmen's clubs, in open areas, and they got very popular. By word of mouth, tourists used to leave the hotel and go and seek out the Talbot brothers, no matter where they were. And if the word got out, hotel management wanted to know where are all the guests going. Everybody said they're out there following the Talbot brothers. And because they had such a pull on the tourists, they decided we better bring you in the hotel to keep our tourists here inside the facility.
So we're sitting at the reefs here in this amazing shoreline. The Talbot brothers began their hotel career at hotels like Elbow Beach, like the Hamilton Princess. Hotels recognized at that time, back in the 40s, that we needed to provide some sort of entertainment. What was that going to be? Was it music? Was it sports? And I think the evolution of music was something that the Talbots were in at the ground level. And we were incredibly lucky to have such talented individuals performing in our hotels, but really having developed their brand, if you want to call it that, long before tourism.
Now you got to remember, during this time, the hotels were segregated.
Bermuda was segregated from the cradle, black babies on one side of the hospital, whites on the other, to the grave. From the cradle to the grave, blacks buried here, whites buried there.
This was a big, big, big deal to have black entertainers in this segregated environment playing predominantly to white guests, which the barriers were broken down almost immediately when they started to play.
While there were restrictions forcing blacks to go through the back door,
They made specific demands to them playing there. Number one was that they enter the front door, not the back door, where most other employees had to enter. That was number one. Number two was they needed certain beverages in the changing room. 1 bottle of black rum, 1 bottle of Johnny Walker, 1 bottle of ginger beer, a flask of water, and a bucket of ice.
It almost became a legend in addition to their music. And people would look for this bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label, would take care of them and pour their drinks, and they would meet people.
Once one hotel got them, they followed suit, and every night they were at a different hotel because of the demand. So now that opened the door, because you can't be in two places at one time, that created space for other Bermudian artists, Calypsonians, to now get into the hotel.
right after the war, everybody's looking for some type of product to get tourists coming here. So Takastan became one, nightclubs become one. They start to focus on our holidays a bit. Maybe people will come for that. Our beaches, they're definitely going to come for them. What is our slogan? And so all of a sudden, the Talbot brothers, who are making these international tours, and people like them, they're singing, the dress, the friendliness, the knowledge of Bermuda beyond the triangle, they suddenly start to appeal to university students who are on the horizon of graduating.
And this began as sporting events where schools, universities on the eastern seaboard would bring sports teams to Bermuda to compete. And others would come along, and that evolved into parties and fun and boat cruises, and actually a promotional appeal to bring young college students to Bermuda for their holidays on the basis that they would come back later for honeymoons, later for future family trips. And it was an incredible marketing potential that was seen and then actually implemented.
When I was director of tourism, it was important for us to demonstrate to the visitors their vacation for Bermuda really started not when they arrived in Bermuda, but en route to Bermuda. As soon as they arrived in Bermuda, what did they find? They found musicians at the airport welcoming them to Bermuda.
And so in this process of entertaining people and entertaining young people, groups like the Talbot brothers evolved. They were probably the first, and talking about the early 50s, and in those days there were beach parties, there were boat parties. Students were coming here listening to a different kind of music. They might not have even known what Calypso was. And the Talbots put their own brand, their own appearance, their own musical instruments, which were in some cases different, their own colorful shirts, their top hats, and really created this following.
And also the tourism industry recognized this very importantly, because we then began to take musicians overseas. And so not only did they perform here in Bermuda, but every time we had a briefing with travel agents or with companies desiring a special holiday, a special vacation, a special business meeting in Bermuda. And so that once again, the experience of being in Bermuda began long before they actually set foot on Bermuda soil.
They were out there performing in country clubs with people who they knew, people that they'd met in Bermuda, and got to meet these people in their own backyards, and in a way were promoting Bermuda long before modern day advertising. In those days it was something called the Trade Development Board. That group of people, that board, recognized that in the Talbots we had ambassadors, not just entertainers, not just musicians, performers, yes, relationships, but ambassadors. And they, in my view, were amongst the first real promoters of what we call modern day tourism. And sadly, in a way, missed that kind of thing.
That's why the Talbots were almost an anomaly, because they had all this stuff that wasn't at their feet. They had all these things that they had to fight through. So the odds of them becoming successful artists, there was no template before then. There was no one before then that said, say, oh, see Talbot Brothers, this is how you do it. No. And in the times of the 40s and 50s and 60s, that's rare. Come from a little island that has a population of 60,000 to compete on the world stage with talent that's recognized. That's, I mean, you know, that's incredible.
Incredible! These guys were geniuses, and the only people who don't realize that are Bermudians. And why did I say that? You enter our airport and you hear no Bermudian music. Nothing. You hear nothing. You have a Bermuda Day and you hear nothing. You have cup match and you hear no local music. Who's responsible for that? Not the system, not the white man, not parliamentarians, we ourselves. We fail to put it in our school system on a regular basis.
I find it disappointing, if not upsetting to a large degree, is that during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Bermuda was flourishing with tremendous great entertainment. Yes, the Talbot brothers, Hubert Smith, the Essex Steel Band. I mean, Bermuda was just flush with talented Bermuda entertainment, and you didn't need, really, a foreign show to come in to entertain the tourists that we had at that time. Because they played such an instrumental role in helping to put Bermuda on the map when Bermuda was in the early years of developing tourism.
I don't think we've lost the need and the desire for entertainment, but we don't have, in my view, what I call homegrown music. And that was the music of the Talbots. You know, entertainers are performing mostly other people's music. So you don't have the Talbots anymore, Hubert Smith, Sidney Bean, all those legends of Calypso natural music. I've always taken the view that evening entertainment and music is really should be part of our offering, should be part of the experience for our visitors. I've always felt that at least 5 nights a week, we need to, at the Reefs, and we do something for our visitors from an entertainment standpoint. Personally, I would love to see some of that, quote, old music, or as I said earlier, that homegrown music that the Talbots and Hubert Smith and Sidney Bean and the other groups like that personified.
The arts are viable economics. The Talbot brothers showed us how. We just have to follow suit. And we have to create the psyche in our mind that we are just as good, in some cases even better, and world class. Musicians, singers, we have world class right here in Bermuda. Be happy, baby.
Red, oh red, see what you do. You put me under the bed and make your sweet man chop off me head.
She said he was just like honey and spice, and everything was going so nice. But then she put him under the bed and make sweet Tony chop off his head.
Red, oh red, see what you do. You put me under the bed and make your sweet man chop off me head.
What did she do too?
Red, oh red, see what you do. You put me under the bed and make your sweet man chop off me